Having a reactive dog can be an absolutely miserable experience. I've helped literally thousands of owners of reactive dogs take their dogs from insanely reactive on every walk through to loose lead, beautiful experiences that takes walking their dog from the chore of their day through to the joy of their day. And in this video, we're going to talk about exactly what you need to know in order to take your reactive dog through to perfect canine companion. Now, if you want to have success with stopping your dog's reactivity, first of all, we have to understand why is your dog reactive in the first place. And we could spend a whole weekend doing a full weekend-long seminar on exactly this topic, but to try and condense all of that down into just a couple of minutes that's useful for you to take away from this video right now, is that you can break it down into kind of 3 steps. Usually your dog encounters a trigger that leads to the reactive behavior. So that's kind of step 1. We have to identify what is the trigger that is creating the behavior. But before we get there, we then want to ask the question, what emotion is that trigger causing in our dogs? When it comes to reactivity, I find that the vast majority of the time, it's actually fear. We see another dog, the dog becomes nervous and fearful. That's the emotion that they're feeling. Then we move into the 3rd step, which is then what is their motivation? So what is the trigger? Another dog in this example. What is the emotion? The dog is feeling fearful. And then what is the motivation? Well, I want that dog to go away. So I'm going to be reactive. Then once the dog goes through that loop, I see another dog, I feel this way, I behave this way to get the dog to go away. And what usually happens when you're out on a walk and your dog's reactive? Well, usually distance is created because you were going to pass each other anyway. But your dog thinks, oh, that worked, perfect. That dog that I feel a bit scared of went away when I did this thing. So next time I encounter that trigger, feel that feeling, want that dog to go away, this behavior serves a purpose to me. That is usually where reactivity comes from and is what's going on in an emotional, motivational and psychological level within our dogs' minds. And when we understand that, that allows us to have more empathy first and foremost for our dogs. We don't use it to excuse the behavior, but we do use it to inform the next steps of the process most effectively and most efficiently. So once we understand where our dog's reactivity comes from, where do we start when it comes to their training? Well, for me, reactivity is usually when we're talking about being out on a walk with our dogs. And before we can start the process, I have to ask the question is, does your dog know how to walk nicely in the first place? And if they don't, that's exactly where we have to start. And you have to start by teaching a basic heel. And that doesn't have to be super fancy. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but it's just having the process of being able to help your dog understand that what we want is for them to be on our left-hand side, whether that's at a stop, this is going to be a good position, or whether we're moving, that's where we want our dogs to be. If we back off, we want to be able to reset them in this position. And you just go through this process of teaching a really basic heel with our dogs. Again, doesn't have to be rocket science, but we add some steps. Then we can add some directions in. We can go both left and right. Again, we're not looking for competition protection standards of heel. Then it's really easy to add a lead to this. Then we can add a cue to these types of behaviors. Break, because then we can get to this point where we can call our dogs into a heel and our dogs understand that this is where we want them to be when we're on a lead. Once we get that process, then we can move into the next stages of training. So after I've taught a heel position, I then need to build something that I like to refer to as engagement. And the best way to do that is utilizing my engagement tune-up drill. One of the problems with reactivity is that when your dog is out on a walk, oftentimes they don't even really know you exist, let alone looking up to you for guidance and direction or engaging with you in any way, because they're looking for the triggers in terms of the reactivity. What we want to do is flip that script, and we want to teach our dogs that whilst we're out on a walk, they must not only be by our side in heel, not only on a loose lead, but they must be engaging with us, following our guidance and direction. That's beautiful for loose lead walking, but has a beautiful knock-on effect for reactivity specifically, because what it does is if your dog understands they have to be focusing on you, following your guidance and direction, a lot of the emotional salience of the triggers comes down because they're not overly worrying about that because they're keeping their focus up on you. That's the first huge benefit. The second benefit is going through the tune-up process also allows you to teach the language of the lead to your dog in an effective way, which is what we're going to be able to utilize later on in the process that we'll talk about later in this video, of being able to interrupt bad decisions and close off bad behavior highways. But going through this process is the step-by-step thing that I do with every single dog that I work with to make sure that reactivity is a complete non-issue, because there's nobody that needs to deal with it with their dogs. Now, I've just been working on it with one of my sanctuary cases, Chance. He's a Connie Corso with excessive pulling and reactivity towards other dogs. If he continues those behaviors, he has no chance of being rehomed. And even if he does, he's probably going to end up back in the rescue center. And we're just going to, just go through the tune-up drill. So I'm just going to kind of go through it at a normal pace, really. Let's go. Good. Oh. Boy. Yeah, good lad. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy, good. But this process is exactly the steps that I'm following with him, and the tune-up drill in a matter of minutes took him from pulling like a freight train with no engagement to beautiful engagement following my guidance and direction, which tells me that pulling on the lead and reactivity is going to be a non-issue for him in a few days following the next steps we'll talk about in this video. Now, before we look at the next tips for helping your reactive dog become a perfect canine companion, I just wanted to let you know that I do have a complete reactivity reset course, and that course is available in my Perfect Canine Companion bundle. It's literally everything that you could ever need to help your dogs become perfect canine companions, like my mates Sully and Reggie here. So if you want to learn more about that course, there's a link in the description box below. And to thank you for being a supporter of this channel, there's even a special discount that you'll be able to access just by clicking on that link. So if you want to learn more about those courses and how they support the work that we do at my canine sanctuary with all the rescue dogs that we work with, completely free of charge, again, all of that information is in that link in the description box below. But let's get back to the video and look at some more reactivity tips. So if you really want to master reactivity, you have to understand something called my behavior highway. And let's imagine you're out with your dog and everything's going fine. You've not seen anything, there's been no triggers to cause the behavior. And then suddenly that trigger displays itself. What happens is that your dog sees that trigger and then it has choices it can make on how to behave. And all of those different choices are different behavior highways. What we have to do is we have to teach our dog which choice we want them to take. And we have to make that highway as appealing as possible. We want to fill that highway with rainbows and unicorns and butterflies and all the wonderful things. And we do that with obedience training and positive reinforcement-led obedience training. But that alone rarely works when it comes to reactivity, because we can do everything in our power to make that behavior decision as appealing as possible to our dogs. But if they still have the choice of which behavior to choose, there's a very good chance that they'll choose the reactivity-based pathway. So if we want to have success, we have to take a twofold approach. First of all, yes, we have to make the right decision as appealing as possible, as easy as possible for our dogs to choose that choice. However, we also have to barricade off the wrong decisions. We have to communicate to them, hey buddy, don't go down that pathway again, please. And we do that by interrupting the bad decisions. Now, those interruptions can look like one of many different things, from verbal interruptions to, yes, we might need to use some physical interruptions to let them know that is a bad decision and it's causing you a lot of problems. It's causing me a lot of stress. If you've got dogs this size, it can be causing you a lot of physical harm, and it's definitely going to be causing stress to the other people that your dogs are reacting towards. So we have a duty of care to say, no, you can't make that decision anymore, but remember this decision we've spent loads of time working on, helping you understand is the right decision. Choose that one instead. And over time, what happens is your dogs will stop choosing that bad decision because they know that that only leads to that decision being interrupted. But they choose the good decision because they know that that decision leads to positive, wonderful things. And it's in that combination of both of those things that leads to real success when it comes to reactivity. So then if there's one thing that I wish that you could take away from this video, it's first and foremost is that there is hope. You don't have to live with reactivity. As a clinical canine behaviorist, I've helped countless people go from extreme reactivity to perfect loose lead walking, no matter where they are. It absolutely can be done when you follow a lot of those tips and a lot of those strategies. And again, I have lost count of how many successful cases we've had in this field. And if you want to learn more, remember the Perfect Canine Companion course will break it all down with tons of practical demonstrations and examples for you. There'll be a link in the description box below. But thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you're new. I can't wait to see you on the next one.